What's going on, guys? And welcome back to the Mark and Graham podcast. This is week 3, and we are coming at you live from YouTube. Follow our YouTube channel at Mark and Graham _ podcast. Follow us on Instagram and follow us on Twitter at Mark and Graham podcast. So if you listened last week, you heard our clown of the day. You heard us talk about Tom Brady abusing his kids. You heard us talking a lot about the trade deadline. You heard us talking a lot about the New York Yankees, specifically what they did wrong, everything at the trade deadline. We did our Mark and Graham of the day. We gave you a little preview of what we were going to see from the Philadelphia Eagles and the New York Giants, and we spent a little bit of time talking about Taco Fall at the end. So speaking of the New York Giants and Eagles, we have a big football day, Mark. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Like we said, last week was a big baseball-heavy episode, and it was kind of crazy. Over the past week since our last episode dropped, there's been so much turnover in the MLB. Like, keep in mind, we all put the Boston Red Sox in our odd man out, and all of a sudden, after getting swept by the Yankees, it's almost like they're out of the playoff contention completely.
Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, a lot went on this past week, and of course, we saw training camps were really getting to go underway. Did you watch the Hall of Fame game?
Of course I did.
Yeah.
Honestly, I watched a little bit of it, if I'm going to be honest, because I don't like watching those backups play. It's cool, but I want to see the main guys play. And honestly, the Broncos aren't a very entertaining team, and they're probably not going to be spoken about much this season. So looking at what we have today, we're going to start with our, clown of the day, per usual. Heard Max Kellerman's had some really, really dumb stuff on live television. We're going to talk about LeBron's parenting skills. And speaking of LeBron, he's not too happy about these these new agent rules going on in the NCAA. And the NFL and the NBA released an all-decade team. And, me and Mark thought it'd be a good idea to maybe draft our own team, so maybe you could figure out about that. And then we're going to talk about football rivalries, the best rivalries in football, and there are plenty. We're going to give you our early Super Bowl predictions, and then we are going to wrap it up with our Mark and Graham of the day. So we're going to start out with our clown of the day. Mark, what do you got?
All right, so this week, to go with our NFL theme and training camp getting underway, I'm gonna go with a guy who he's like you. He's got one of them clown noses at home that he can wear at any time of day because of how many clown moves he makes. And that's Antonio Brown. He is one of the biggest stars in all of football, but he just can't seem to get out of that shadow of acting a fool. And
acting a fool, he's shacked in a fool, man.
And we saw this past week he's got the foot injury that was caused by his therapy in an ice bath.
Cryotherapy. It's basically when they freeze. It's when they use like liquid nitrogen temperatures to heal your body. And I don't know if you saw a picture of the feet on Twitter. It might have been the grossest looking frostbite I've ever seen. It might have been the grossest thing I've ever seen, period. I just complete lack of awareness from him on his part. But he's Antonio Brown, so he's going to get away with it.
Exactly, like he always does. And, I mean, it wasn't like it was an innocent mistake. He wasn't wearing the footwear that you're supposed to when you go into one of those, and it cost him. And the reality is he's going to miss a lot of the preseason on a new team where he has a new offense to learn. And if he, God forbid, he misses week 1 possibly, you got to start looking at Antonio Brown as an Allen Iverson type where they had all the potential in the world and they just couldn't stay out of their own way.
Now, you say that, he's on a new team and he's got to learn this new offense, but you think if Antonio Brown goes out there and does everything right and he, excels, do you think that this could surpass him, he could surpass DeAndre Hopkins for supposedly the best wide receiver in the NFL?
Honestly, I think Antonio Brown's prime is past. As great as he is.
Wow.
And I think a guy like Hopkins, a guy like Michael Thomas, a guy like Devontae Adams. I see you're repping the Packers jersey today.
Clay Matthews, baby.
Those are the types who are entering their prime. And Antonio Brown's a top 10.
Clay Matthews entering his prime?
What'd you say?
Say Clay Matthews is entering his prime.
No, Devontae Adams. I'm
Oh,
talking senior.
he's good. Devontae Adams is entering his prime.
Yeah, but I think those are the guys that are going to surpass Antonio Brown, and I still think he's going to be a huge player when he's on the field for the
No,
Raiders.
110%.
But you're going to see some guys start to leap him in the wide receiver power rankings.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. So my clown of the day is my man Max Kellerman. And I don't normally say this because I love Max Kellerman, but the man's an idiot. He said on live television, he said 2010's Kobe, I would put on the NBA's worst all-decade team for the 2010s. The worst, I didn't say all-decade team, I said worst all-decade team. Mark, when you hear that right off the bat, what do you think?
I agree.
Excuse me, don't listen to him. Listen to me. Mark's an idiot. Max Kellerman's an idiot. How are you going to disrespect Kobe Bryant like that? How are you going to disrespect someone that has brought glory to LA? Not saying LA hasn't had, glory brought to them before, but I thought Kobe just brought a mentality that LA needed.
Yeah, I mean, definitely brought a mentality, but I think it was more a mentality of having a career shooting percentage that was lower than any teammate he played with. He had the lowest shooting percentage of any of the so-called greatest basketball players of all time. And we're going to get into this later, but I personally believe he's one of the most overrated athletes of all time. I think he won one MVP that was one of the weakest statistical MVP seasons of all time. It was worse than Steph Curry's worst MVP season, which is considered not even deserving in itself. LeBron should have won that MVP. I think
we can go with that.
The minute you took away the star big men that were on his teams, he did nothing. And
Curry?
Kobe did nothing when he was by himself. Nothing. And when you look at the 2010s all-decade team, how many of those years was he a complete non-factor? Did he even win a title in the 2010s? I believe it was 2008 or 9.
You're right. I think he might have won in 2010.
Dude, he might only have 1 or 2 playoff appearances in the 2010s.
You know what? The Lakers were going through a rebuild, and I didn't even say that. I think it's so disrespectful because he changed the game. Like Kobe changed the way shooting guards play. He brought an athleticism to the shooting guard position.
He brought a mentality of overshooting to the shooting guard position. That's what he did because all he did is shoot. And I think he delayed their rebuild by 10 years by sticking around for so long and by having a retirement tour where he went from city to city just collecting clout, didn't do anything for his team, led them to a bottom 4 record in the entire NBA, and then put on this last game where he scored, how many points did he score? 60. The defense, there was no defense being played. He took the most shots I've ever seen in a professional game in my life. And you know who the real star is of that era? A guy like Tim Duncan, who has scored. He just went and did about his thing. He won more than Kobe ever did. And he retired that same year in the off season and just came out and said, I retire. He didn't need a year-long tour while leading his team to the worst record in the NBA like Kobe. And you know where Duncan was that year? In the playoffs.
I think for you to say that when, Kobe is playing in the Western Conference, Kobe doesn't have a solid set of teammates. I couldn't even name you Kobe's teammates from the 2010s. They were so bad. There was a time where Kobe Bryant was the only reason why LA basketball was even on the map,
But I mean, you remember the guys on LeBron's team when he took them to the finals and lost?
And they lost 4-1.
With Rodney Hood and
Mo Williams,
and who was even on that team? Kevin Love was injured all year. Tristan Thompson, JR.
That's Mo Williams. Oh, we're talking about 2015? I thought you were talking about 20, pretty early, like on the first stint with the Cavs.
Preheat LeBron. Nah. I don't know. I am not a Kobe guy. I think he's a glorified Carmelo Anthony, who's also one of the most overrated players of all time.
Get out of here. Leave. Literally, get out of your chair and leave.
If you want to hear a hot take,
now,
I think Dwayne Wade is a better all-time shooting guard than Kobe Bryant. I truly believe that. I think he was a better teammate. I think he made his teammates better than Kobe ever did.
What are you smoking?
And Dwayne Wade won when he had nobody else on his team, unlike Kobe, who was a complete non-factor.
Did Kobe ever play in the Eastern Conference?
Back then, the West wasn't what it is now. The West had the Mavericks. The Mavericks won the West and won the finals one year. The Mavericks with Jason Kidd past his prime as their point guard. It's not the West that you know of nowadays.
Hey, Tyson Chandler was a beast on that team. Dirk Nowitzki was a beast on that team. Jason Terry was a beast on that team. Sean Marion was a beast on that team. Let's not forget. Dirk had some supporting cast.
I don't know. I know I'm going to make a lot of people mad. Shout out Jess. Shout out Matt Grave. Big Kobe fans. But everyone knows I'm not a Kobe guy. And I used to get in Twitter fights with random people all the time about how much I hated Kobe Bryant. And I'll show you stats for days and days that prove that he is a little bit overrated at his statistical career.
All right. All I'm saying is you need to check yourself because that was the dumbest thing that I have ever heard. So after hearing that, I just want to move on. So LeBron alley-ooping at Bronny's games. Too much or right on?
I go back and forth on this one. It's getting debated all over sports media right now. A lot of people taking the route of, yes, it was too much. You can't be doing that and taking over the spotlight of your son who's turning into a top recruit and needs to be able to make a name for himself without being in his dad's shadow. It's kind of a disservice to him. Then you have the other side who's saying, and this is a lot of athletes are taking this side going, what do you want from us? We get ridiculed for not being in our kids' lives. And especially as a black father, there's a bit of a race controversy here where it's like a lot of black fathers, they get wrongly stereotyped for not being in their kids' lives. And LeBron is there at every single game rooting on his child. And
the whole team, forget his kid.
Yeah, exactly.
The whole team. And I think, I just don't think that this is something people should be getting mad about. I'm going to be honest with you. LeBron is only helping his kid. It's only helping those kids. People go there to see LeBron James, but that's more eyes on their kids. That's more recruiters coming. That's more business. And from a parent's standpoint, LeBron James is only going to help your kid. So if he wants to throw a few dunks around, who cares?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see that point. There was one moment when he kicked his shoe off in the middle of the game and ran on the court. Like, you get arrested for doing that in a lot of other places. And just
you're LeBron, it's cool
because he's an athlete and he's LeBron James. I don't necessarily think he should be doing that. And the other thing is, there's a lot of parents, famous parents that have been in the spotlight before. Like, I don't know if you remember Serena and Venus's parents. They were all over the place.
Huge controversy with them.
Yeah, they were over the top. So I think it's easy to just be like, oh, it's LeBron. Let's destroy everything he ever does and just beat it to death on media like it's their job to just talk about LeBron. But overall, I would agree. It's a bit of an overreaction. I see where they're coming from. And there was a guy like Archie Manning was nowhere near as in the spotlight as LeBron is now. He sat back in his seat and watched them from afar. But I don't think he's necessarily crossed the line yet either.
Archie Manning was also probably 35 when LeBron James was born. Like, let's be real. Archie Manning's an old dude. LeBron James is 35. Like, he is. Like, he may have 3 kids, but him and Bronny are only what? Like, 18 years apart?
Something like that. Nah, a little more.
No. I
I'm in his 20s, I think.
huh?
Didn't he have him in his 20s? There's no way LeBron was a teen parent. I'll tell you that.
I think he had his kid as soon as he was in the league.
Really?
I don't know.
I'd be interested to look it up.
He does not seem, old compared to Ronnie. But
All right, so moving on from that conversation, we're going to go a different route, but also related to LeBron James and something he got really upset about
I'm
recently.
furious about it. I'm so effing pissed about this because of the fact that they went at it. Literally seemed like they went at Rich Paul. I couldn't believe this, Mark.
And for those of you that haven't heard, the NCAA, who has more issues right now than any organization in the world, they have plenty of issues to cover at their owners' meetings. They decide to make a new rule that to be an agent in the NBA recruiting college talent and
And you got
bringing
to listen to this. This is freaking crazy.
you have now got to have at least a bachelor's degree, which Rich Paul does not. You need to take an exam in college with a professional liability insurance. It's an in-person exam that will be required in November to recruit players throughout that year.
And just to inform everyone, this is for this is for the underage recruiter, the more underage athletes that want to just tiptoe into the NBA waters. They don't know if they want to sign yet. Some guys, graduate college and they're like, all right, I'm ready to go. It doesn't matter anymore. If you are a, freshman who just wants to touch the water, this is what you got to do.
And then the last part is you got to have an NBPA certification for at least 3 consecutive years. So ultimately, Rich Paul, who is the agent of LeBron James, a best childhood friend of his,
Owner of Clutch Sports.
Yes, owner of Clutch Sports, who LeBron brought in when he came to the NBA as his agent, as his best friend. And there's been a lot of conspiracies over the year that Clutch Sports and Rich Paul is basically just LeBron James as acting as an agent through his best friend Rich Paul, signing the likes of Anthony Davis and Ben Simmons.
That's so interesting.
Yes, that's a confirmed conspiracy and the reason that this legislation is getting passed by the NCAA. So I know you're a little angry about this. Let's hear.
Who cares? Like, why does it matter? Why does it matter? Why do you need a college degree? College is expensive for some people. Rich Paul and LeBron James, they came out of Akron, Ohio. They had nothing. And you're going to look at this man who built an empire. Rich Paul owned this summer. Rich Paul's making more money than athletes right now because of contracts he signed. No one can do that besides Rich Paul. This literally looks like a direct go at him, Mark. And I'm so mad about this right now because this is just it's like in elementary school or in high school when you get into a fight outside of school, but then the school gets involved. It's like when Rich Paul's making all this money, the NCAA has to get involved. No one asked them. No one asked them to get involved. That's all.
Yeah. The thing is, you talk about this summer being owned by Rich Paul, and was it owned by him or was it owned by LeBron James? And I think I see the point of view that the NCAA is coming from in saying that we can't have. It's NBA tampering. It's that idea of players coming into the league with hiring agents that are literally just their friends and building teams and recruiting other players through that best friend. Whereas if you require the bachelor's degree, these guys can still get agents that are their friends, but they're going to have to sign somewhere else first because their friends are typically going to be around the same age, graduating at the same time, and they're going to need that bachelor first. So imagine Ben Simmons came into the league with a best friend who now needs a bachelor's degree to be his agent. He's going to come into the league and sign with another agent first because he only played 1 year while his friend is still in school getting this degree.
Ridiculous. It's just it. The people don't understand, and I think it's the NCAA as well. Is that it's not like an agent is like whatever. He just handles your money. Your agent has to be a very good friend of yours. They're getting a percent of your contract. You're trusting them to make you money and them money at the same time. And that's why, you see a lot of close relationships between agents and athletes because it's like they're friends, And Rich Paul and LeBron James, they've been at it for a long time. And this is just another, demerit on the NCAA's list at this point, Mark. I'm so pissed off about this. I don't even know what to say.
Well, maybe what'll cheer you up is a little bit of LeBron can get some redemption in our NBA all-decade.
Yes, love to hear that. Love it.
All right, so recently NBA.com came out, and it's a little downtime in the NBA after a busy offseason. So they're like, why don't we come up with our all-decade as we head into 2020 season? Why don't we make an all-decade team? First team, second team, third team, just like they do for all NBA for the 2010s. And we have 5 players for each team, just like a starting lineup. And leading things off is your first team with Steph Curry, James Harden, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard.
That's a lot of buckets right there.
You got any discrepancies there? Who are they missing?
I hate to say it, but I think they got it right on this one. I'm gonna be real. I'm gonna be honest with you. Every player on that list. Who they have a shooting guard again? Who they have at the 2?
James Harden.
Yeah. So if I had to disagree with one of them, it would definitely be Harden. But at the same time, if you look at the numbers that Harden and Curry put up, they're putting up historic numbers. And I think, when you're putting up historic numbers, it's only right that you're rewarded with this. And that's just my personal opinion. I just think that when you put up numbers like this that break records, you have a very good case for yourself. That's all.
I would agree. I think if I had to make one case for a guy that might be the odd man out of this lineup, it would be Kawhi Leonard, actually, because he does have 2 titles, but
one of the best on that list in my mind. I think he's better than LeBron.
You're coming off of recent memory with him, and when you look at all of the 2010s combined, I mean, he has the lowest points per game average out of that entire lineup at 17.7.
Defense.
He's the only one not in the 20s for that career span. He missed a full year his last year in San Antonio.
How did it pay off, though?
And if you're looking at a guy who could potentially replace him, first team, this lineup wasn't necessarily going by position as you didn't have a big man. So if you stay that direction, I think a guy like Russell Westbrook, 2 MVPs, averaging a triple-double.
I guarantee you, if Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook were on the same team still, you would not be saying that. Guaranteed.
You got a point there. If this team is playing a game, I might not be going with him, but he averaged a triple-double. He won 2 MVPs. He was phenomenal, and I'm not a big fan of his. I don't like his character at all.
You don't like his character? I think his character is his best part.
No, his character is the reason he can't win. Nobody likes to play with him. He gets too beat up over drama with his teammates and with fans. He can't handle to yell at. He can't hold himself back from yelling at fans. All right, so let's move on to the second team. Speaking of Russell Westbrook, I'll fire off the names for you here. It was Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, Anthony Davis, Blake Griffin, and Melo.
Okay. All right. Here's what I have to say about that. Take Blake Griffin off the list because if it weren't for those dunks he had earlier in his career, I don't like Blake Griffin. I don't like Blake Griffin. But I'll tell you why I'm going to leave Melo on that list. because Melo's a dominant forward. Melo could be a dominant four or a dominant three. Melo has one of the best shots that I've seen. His quick release, he's clutch. All right, maybe he was a little bit on the heavier side towards the end of his career, but as a New York fan, I'm pretty biased. I love Melo.
Like, if we were making all NBA teams that started from like the absolute last person you would pick in the entire league, I would maybe consider Melo for first team there, but like that lineup would consist of maybe like Carmelo Anthony, Brian Scalabrine, Glenn Davis, Jeremy Lin, and Yao Ming's left.
Read this one more time.
Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, Anthony Davis, Blake Griffin, Carmelo Anthony.
I don't like Chris Paul in there either.
Dude, you got Chris Paul, I think, is the most talented player out of that list. When you look at his 2010 stats, his numbers in Charlotte are unbelievable. When he was
in Charlotte, he's known in Charlotte.
New Orleans, my bad. Hornets threw me off.
Hey, Charlotte, that threw me off too.
Yeah, no, his numbers though in New Orleans were absurd, and Blake Griffin's numbers are a lot more impressive than you would think. I mean, he averaged 22 points a game and 9 rebounds. He back when Lob City was rolling, it was rolling. And I'll throw you a name, even though another guy I really don't like, but Dwight Howard, I think you have to think about in one of these conversations.
No, I was gonna say Dwight Howard
because he had some years, dude. When they went to the finals, he was phenomenal.
Yeah, but then they lost to Kobe and they didn't go back. But you could also make the same argument about, in terms of Dwight Howard having no supporting cast. And I think you look at a lot of these players and they've had supporting casts. And it's really sad because you got guys that, it's like if Kevin Garnett stayed in Minnesota, He needed that super team to win. LeBron needed that super team. And I'm still waiting for that one team that's led by one guy. And I don't think that's going to happen.
All right, and then we're going to move to the third team, which is the one that got the biggest debate. It got the uproar from Max Kellerman, and that had Dwayne Wade, Kobe Bryant, Paul George, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Giannis. What do you think there?
I don't think Giannis should be on there just for the sole fact that he hasn't had that much of a prime career yet. Do I think eventually we're going to see his name on one of these lists? Yeah, totally. Do I think now's the time to do it? No. Do I think they put his name on the list because he won MVP this year? Yes. Have we not seen a player like Giannis before? No, we haven't. You could say Kevin Durant's like Giannis, but he's not. Giannis is big. You don't see Kevin Durant making plays in the paint. And I love Giannis. I just don't think he's an all-decade player yet, considering, I only learned his name 3 years ago,
I couldn't agree with you more there. I think him and Kobe Bryant are, in my opinion, the two on that list that can be argued the most, and for opposite reasons. Kobe only had 3 or so years in this decade that were good years. And Giannis is 3 years at the back end of the decade. If I'm talking players that weren't named that should be, how about a guy like Mike Conley?
People, it's just, because the Memphis market, you don't really, they're in the Western Conference. They're overshadowed a lot. But you could say Dirk Nowitzki.
Mm-hmm. He was another one. And his finals win is in this decade. I definitely think he was one that was left out, but once again, that was probably because the back end wasn't as great as the front. And also all the guys on those Spurs teams, Duncan, Ginobili, Parker, those are all guys who could creep into this conversation, but they kind of take away from each other's stardom.
You know what? But see, that's the thing. That's why Greg Popovich's teams worked, because they didn't take away stardom from each other. They just knew what everyone was good at, And I'm a big 2K guy. Like Tim Duncan, he is an animal. Like any post up move. He's the big fundamental, and people don't understand that. And it took me a long time to understand what that really meant. But if you look up in a basketball dictionary how to do something, the model is going to be Tim Duncan because he does it perfectly. And I think that's one of the great things about Tim Duncan is that he showed everyone that you don't have to be jacked to be a good big man.
I would agree with that one. I think the big fundamental is one of the most. I said Kobe's overrated, the most underrated player of all time, right alongside Dirk Nowitzki. Both of them are top 5 or top 6 on the all-time scoring list, I believe.
Top 6.
Mind-boggling. And I'm just gonna throw out one more name in this conversation, maybe 2, even though I don't like the other one. The only Warriors on this list was Steph Curry. The only Warrior. What about Clay and what about Draymond? You think they have a place in there with the titles they've won?
I think Clay's too one-dimensional, and I think Draymond is, he's a great defensive player, and I think against the finals and the Cavs, I think that was his peak of offensive production. Do I think they're great players? Yeah, of course. But do I think that Klay Thompson, here's how I look at it. Klay Thompson, he's a great three-point shooter. I'm not taking away from that. But you look at Steph Curry, and there's so much more to Curry's game. The dribbling, the knowledge, the IQ. Not saying, Klay Thompson can't dribble the ball, but he's more of a catch-and-shoot guy, He's more of a get open, grab it, pop it. It's just how he plays. But I think to be on this list, you need to be a little bit more one-dimensional, and I need to see some all-aroundness. And Draymond's a great defensive player, but I think his lack of offensive production and I think Klay's lack of defensive production really is the reason why you don't see him on this list.
And there's 2 more names to throw out there before we move on to some NFL. Raptors, Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan. They had some crazy years out there. DeRozan, I think, is a guy who could creep into that third-team conversation.
What about Chris Bosh?
I like that pull. He used that big 3 Heat team. Those titles all go in the 2010s.
People seem to forget who got the rebound before Ray Allen shot it. Mm-hmm. And Chris Bosh is one of those guys that he's just one of those guys that you don't really look at him when he's on the court. He's this dinosaur looking guy, and he actually looks like a Raptor. It's really funny.
It is. Imagine getting drafted to a team that you look like the mascot.
It's kind of funny. It's actually really funny. But yeah, guys like Chris Bosh, I think you could definitely consider just how much influence they have on the game. And I think that, guys like that seem to get overshadowed. Guys like Dirk Nowitzki too. Very just outspoken players, so you don't really hear them talk much.
All right, so talking all decades. Fantasy season's coming up. NFL season's coming up. What do you say we do a little NFL all-decade draft?
I like that idea. So how this is going to work is me and Mark have already drafted our quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers, 3 each. And how this works is... we didn't draft our wide receivers yet. We drafted 3 quarterbacks and 3 running backs. And we are going to draft live on the show 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and a defensive end.
A defensive player.
A defensive player, not a DN. And these are going to be from the decades. So we're going to run through our teams real quick. Now, Mark doesn't know my team, and I don't know his team. So when he tells me his team, I could just rip him a new one, which is probably going to happen because Mark doesn't know anything. I'm just kidding. You know about Philly, but it's Philly. It's whatever. Stick to baseball, Brody.
I'm not so sure you can argue with my top picks, but you know who my quarterbacks and running backs are. You're not scared of that yet? We did those rounds.
All right. So with my first, I took the legend with the robotic neck, Mr. Peyton Manning. And I'll tell you why I took Peyton Manning, because it's plain and simple. All-time touchdown leader. Probably going to get broken by Tom Brady. Doesn't matter. He had 50 plus. He had 58 touchdowns in one season, in one of his last seasons after getting the neck surgery. That's all I got to say. Peyton Manning is one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history, and I don't even have to explain that. Mark?
Um, I can't give up my Brady hate, even though he's the GOAT. So I don't want him on my all-decade team, even though he's better than every other player by a large margin. Give me my guy, Drew Brees, the all-time passing yards leader. They decided to have a ceremony for him in the middle of a Monday night football game for God knows what reason, but that's because he is one of the most talented players I've ever seen play the game.
And one of the most well-respected players.
Exactly. Every teammate he ever has played with, he just is the professional of all professionals. And I'm going to snake back around and grab Aaron Rodgers. You're repping the Packer green. Aaron Rodgers is the Packer name. He won his Super Bowl, though, in 2009, so it doesn't quite make the decade, but I'm taking that regular season Rodgers every day of the week on my team.
Did you say regular season Rodgers or playoff Rodgers?
He doesn't. Playoff Rodgers isn't the same. He really hasn't won that much in his career, but regular season Rodgers, there's nobody better. Late in a game, he's Mr. Clutch. Hail Mary Rodgers. I want him on my team.
So my last two quarterbacks, I took the yin and the yang. I took the GOAT, Tom Brady, and I took his arch nemesis and my godfather, Eli Manning. And I'll tell you why. Eli Manning, before Ben McAdoo became the head coach, was one of the best players in the NFL. He had all-time highs in his offensive statistics the year before Ben McAdoo got hired to be the head coach. People forget that he took down the GOAT, the 6-time Super Bowl champion, Tom Brady. And there's a reason why Tom Brady doesn't have 9. And it's because of 2 men, Eli and Nick Foles. There is no other person who has taken down Tom Brady in a Super Bowl, yet alone twice. That alone is why Eli should be on this list. And Tom Brady because he's the GOAT. Mark, who'd you have?
Well, I mean, for the same reasons, I got to go with my guy, Nick. I'm just playing with you. I can't do that.
That was good.
Give me Russell Wilson, honestly. Russell Wilson is a winner. I'm not even a huge fan of the guy. For some reason, there's something about him. The way, I guess, he's so frustrating when the Eagles play him, the way he runs around and lobs the ball up to the worst receiving core in the NFL. And Doug Baldwin somehow comes down with it. I don't understand. But he's a winner. He's been to 2 or 3 Super Bowls. I forget. They won 1. I think 3, right? No. They
won 1 and they lost 1.
Yeah.
Because they didn't give it to Marshawn on the goal line.
The Malcolm Butler play, yeah.
Yes. Now, they say, or at least I say this, Kyler Murray owes Russell Wilson a huge thank you, because if it weren't for Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray would have been drafted in the 4th round or the 3rd round.
I don't necessarily disagree. There's never been a player like him in the draft.
That's why he was drafted in the 3rd round.
And the difference is, so you can't make the height argument. You really can't, because nobody talked about Baker Mayfield that way, and it's because Drew Brees had already broken that for him. Baker Mayfield fit the Drew Brees prototype of being a small quarterback who lives off accuracy and is somewhat, well, Brees wasn't mobile, but coming out of college, Brees was mobile.
And then he hurt himself.
Exactly. And obviously Baker is mobile, but nowhere near what Kyler and Russell are. Those guys bank on making plays with their feet, and I completely agree with you. If it's not for Russell Wilson, a guy like Kyler Murray, you're not expecting to be able to surmount that height disadvantage and a lack of pure accuracy and throwing ability.
Well, yeah, 100%. So now we're going to look at our running backs. I'm going to just bang out my 3 right now, and then you're going to give me your 3, and we're going to talk about it for a little bit. Got to go with the almost record breaker, Adrian Peterson, the stubborn yet very talented Le'Veon Bell, And, of course, the short and stocky boy coming out of Jacksonville, Maurice Jones-Drew. Mark, right off the bat, what do you think?
AP is the easiest. You had the first pick in that round. Obviously, I'm taking him if I have first pick. Great pick. He's the best running back of this decade, unquestionably. And I think the only pick that is somewhat debatable there, I mean, I like the Le'Veon because he's destroyed the back end of this decade, the last 5 years. But Maurice Jones-Drew, I think his prime was like in between the 2000s and 2010s. He's been retired now for a while. So I loved him when he was a player. He's one of my favorites. He rocked one of my favorite numbers, 22. But I can't put him. I would rather the three that I have, I'll say.
Nice. Mark, let's hear yours.
Well, my first pick, I went with Shady McCoy. I know it's a little bit biased, but for a good 6 years there, he was he was your top 3 picks in every fantasy football draft.
Like, here's the thing.
This guy was a baller.
Cliff Kingsbury, what am I saying? Jeez. We were just talking about Kyler Murray. That's why I said that. LaShawn McCoy was always one of those guys that he would get you 20 points for 5 games straight, and then he would get you 5 points the next 3. He's just one of those guys, and he's just inconsistent. In my mind, at least.
I got that image of him in the Detroit Snow Bowl game, running all over the snowy field. I think just hate to see it.
That's crazy.
Right? With Nick Foles at quarterback, and this man he was so shifty. He was one of the hardest backs I've ever seen to tackle, and he put up numbers. And if it's not for Chip Kelly being the terrible franchise ruiner that he was, he was for about a year. Shady is still there, and they never go out and get DeMarco Murray. Oh my God. Don't even get me started. But then on the snake, I grabbed Chris Johnson, CJ2K. I talk about rushing, breaking records. How about rushing for over 2,000 yards? He was a beast. Put together one of the best seasons I've ever seen in my life. When he was in Tennessee, there was nobody that could run like him. And don't forget, he made that comeback with the Cardinals that one year, and he was a solid player that year, and they went to the playoffs.
Now, I feel like Chris Johnson again is one of those players that he had a magical offensive line like 1 year, and because you look at the statistics, and there's a big drop after that year, and his career just went down. And I think the problem with the NFL is it's so unpredictable. Like, if you told me last year that Saquon Barkley was going to have as many all-purpose yards as he did, I would have told you to go eat dirt in my backyard. Like, it's just one of those things. The NFL is so unpredictable, and that's what makes football the best sport in the world. So we're going to look at our wide receivers now, which excuse me. Mark has to give his third pick.
You just brought it up. They didn't give the ball to him in the crucial Super Bowl play. Marshawn Lynch, Skittles, that's my pick.
It's picked off at the goal line.
He has been a monster throughout his whole career. Talk about being hard to bring down. It wasn't because of agility. It was because nobody could get that man on his feet. And you know how he would jump into the end zone and say, hold my you-know-what. He was a monster. And I got to go with him with my third pick. Let's hear your receivers. This is where we're starting fresh.
All right, so my 2 wide receivers.
Nah, start with 1.
All right, my first one, right off the bat, I'm going to go with Randy Moss. Off the bat, Mark, go.
2010s. Did Randy Moss play in the 2010s?
Yeah.
Might be more 2000s.
No, he was with the Patriots.
I don't know when that was.
2000. Oh, you're right. I take my pick back. You are so right. I did not think about that. Good call, man. Damn. I just had a slip up. I'll give you the first pick here. I don't really.
All right.
Just run my thing.
Maybe I'll spark an idea for you. My first pick, I'm gonna go Larry Fitzgerald. I think Larry Fitz is a guy that talk about a combination of statistics and winning. He won, and he just year after year. It didn't matter how old he was. He's still doing it today. He catches the ball. He catches touchdowns. He's got memorable playoff plays. The overtime game where he ran it in the end zone against the Packers. The Steelers Super Bowl. Even though they lost, he balled out. I think he's been an all-time receiver.
Megatron. That's my first pick. Calvin Johnson. He was by far the freakiest athlete. And my second pick is going to be another freaky athlete. I'm going to go with Julio Jones. I think Julio Jones has the freakish athletic ability. And it's just something I've never seen before. And when he scored that first touchdown after having that long stint without scoring, it was the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I think Julio Jones is, next to Megatron, the best wide receiver of the 2010s.
All right, so and then are we going 2 receivers or 3?
2.
All right. My second pick, I brought him up earlier. We kind of trashed on him a little bit, and it's rare that you see somebody be your clown of the day and then you bring him in this conversation. But give me Antonio Brown. His statistics are ridiculous.
Based off facts, you're right. If this based off statistics, you're totally right.
A lot of people, that 4-year stretch he had is the closest thing to ever to a Jerry Rice run. He was phenomenal. And pair him with Larry Fitzgerald, you have a receiving core that is not going to drop passes, and they're going to put up numbers, and they're going to score touchdowns like nobody else in the league really can. So that's what I'm going to take. Let's hear your tight end.
Tight end, right off the bat, I'm going to go Jason Witten. No, actually, I want to take Witten, but Antonio Gates from the San Diego Chargers. I think Antonio Gates was again over-reliable for Phillip Rivers. I thought he always produced, and he was a beast. And his route running was insane. He always was more athletic than everyone. And I was going to say Tony Gonzalez, but I really thought Tony Gonzalez's good end of his career was at the front with the Chiefs. And I thought that stint with the Falcons at the end was really just to, get his career back. But overall, I definitely think Antonio Gates is my number one.
All right. I just watched Tony Gonzalez's Hall of Fame speech this past weekend, and I kept thinking to myself, like, it's got to be a shame to be Tony Gonzalez because as amazing as he was, best tight end of all time for 1 year maybe, because he had to deal with Antonio Gates coming in his prime right at the end of Gonzalez's. And then the greatest tight end of all time comes on the scene, wins Super Bowl after Super Bowl, Rob Gronkowski, the greatest tight end of all time. He is my pick. You just gave him to me somehow.
I don't like Gronk.
Gronk, there's no debating. He's the
injury prone, injuries.
And still with the injuries, the amount of touchdowns he's caught, the amount of Super Bowls he's won, Gronkowski's the greatest tight end of all time. I'm excited to see who you have for defense, though. I'm giving anybody you want.
Defensive player, gotta go with Troy Polamalu. I got it. I think Troy Polamalu was the best example of you don't have to be a ginormous athlete to be good. He was really the Tasmanian devil. He was at safety, but you'd find him in the backfield. He would start at safety, but you'd find him on this side of the field. Troy Polamalu was so athletic, and he could run field. He could run sideline to sideline. And I think for a defensive player, you're an Eagles fan. Brian Dawkins, another guy that I could have picked. He was one of the hardest hitting safeties, and that's it. That's my team.
I got to give a shout out to Brian Dawkins real quick. Even though I'm not going to take him, you went with the safety. I'm not trying to be biased here. Brian Dawkins, though, is my favorite athlete of all time. I have pictures of him all over my room. Actually, I've met the guy. Incredible.
He looks so much better in Broncos orange and blue anyway.
I have a Broncos jersey of him. That's how much I love the guy.
Damn.
But just a quick shout out. There's nobody that hit like Weapon X. He tackled better than any player the NFL has ever seen. Ridiculous. But if I'm taking one guy, I'm going with the most important position on the defensive side of the ball. Middle linebacker, give me Ray Lewis. He was the best middle linebacker I've ever seen in my life.
It's a good one. Ray Lewis is a beast. Like,
The way he went out on his career, winning the Super Bowl in the worst Super Bowl of all time, but he's to be a middle linebacker that can single-handedly win your team a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco as your quarterback, like that says enough in itself. He was the most pure leader, the most pure, hard-hitting, wrap-up middle linebacker I've ever seen. That's my team. I got Brees, Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Shady McCoy, Chris Johnson, Marshawn Lynch, Larry Fitzgerald, Antonio Brown, Gronkowski, and my defensive player, Ray Lewis. Let's hear what you got.
I got Eli Manning, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, AP, Le'Veon, Maurice Jones-Drew, excuse me, Antonio Gates, and Troy Polamalu.
Receivers?
Oh,
It's Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, I got Johnson and Julio.
I like our teams. We'll have to throw them up. We'll throw them up on the Instagram, on the Twitter, and we'll let you guys vote on whose team you like better.
Definitely. So before we hear our early Super Bowl predictions and our Mark and Graham of the day to finish it out, we're going to do Odd Man Out real quick. And we are going to talk about the best rivalries in the NFL. So, Mark, I'll start. We're going to count down from 5 today. Switch it up a little bit.
So do it from 5 and then the odd man out?
What's up?
Are we giving the odd man out first, the 6th?
Yeah, let's do that. I like that idea. So my odd man out right off the bat, Bengals Steelers. Great rivalry, not enough playoff games, really just a rivalry between players. So once they leave, I think the rivalry won't be as good. And I think every good rivalry has a bunch of playoff games or divisional games. They have to mean something. That's my, if it's a real rivalry. Mark, wrong or right?
I would agree with that. Playoffs bring the intensity, and that's what creates a rivalry.
Do you want to hear my 5 or do you want to give your odd man out?
I'll cheer your 5.
All right. So number 5, I got Buffalo, New England. Now, Tom Brady suffered his worst loss of the Belichick-Brady era against the Bills. It was 31-0. And ever since then, I just looked at this rivalry different. And for some reason, it just seems like Tom Brady can't, like he can't play in Miami. Sometimes Buffalo gets to him. And I don't know why. I just think it's the Buffalo crowd. I love their football atmosphere. I love how crazy they are. I love the table diving. I find that hilarious. So keeping with this divisional role, this one hits hard to the Mark and Graham podcast. Giants Eagles, some of the greatest games I've ever seen, including that. I can't even say it. That Deshaun Jackson return. Don't you? I hate that so much. Then we're gonna look at. I think Steelers Ravens is also really good. Again, the Steelers and the Ravens are divisional rivals, and it seems like every game that they play, Mark, has playoff. How do I say this? The results can affect where they go in the playoffs. That's what I'm getting at. My top 2, and I think everyone could agree with this: Giants Cowboys. That's where Odell made the catch. Oh, what? Oh, I can't wait to hear Mark's. But definitely Giants Cowboys. I hate to sound a little biased, but that's just me. And number 1, Green Bay Packers versus the Chicago Bears. By far, one of the best rivalries in sports, no doubt. Lambeau Field, Soldier Field, 2 historic teams. Every single time they play, something cool happens. Mark, those are my top 5. Odd man out, Bengals and Steelers. That's who yours.
So starting with odd man out, I'm going to go with my only non-divisional rivalry, and that's because it's more a look towards the future, because I think it's about to become a great rivalry over the next 5 years. And we saw a playoff game for the ages last year and a regular season game for the ages last year. Patriots-Chiefs. Mahomes-Brady on the back end of Brady's career and the front end of Mahomes is going to be historic to watch. I could see that being the AFC Championship for the next 3 years. And you got Andy Reid and Bill Belichick, who you could argue are the two best coaches in the NFL right now.
Oh, 100%.
The two best offenses in the NFL. That's going to be so fun to watch for the next couple of years, and I'm looking forward to it. It's my odd man out because it's not a divisional rivalry. They're not even guaranteed to play every single year, but I think there's going to be enough playoff matches in the coming years that it will build into an unbelievable rivalry. Number 5, I'm going NFC South, Saints Falcons.
Okay.
This one has had so much firepower on the offensive end for the past decade with Drew Brees and Matt Ryan firing back and forth. I feel like they've alternated years winning the division and being the better team. It's been very balanced. Julio Jones and Michael Thomas now. You got Marshawn Lattimore against Julio Jones, Trufant against Michael Thomas. It's
great matchups.
Fun, all across the board, and they're just such balanced teams every single year.
Number 4.
You're repping both squads. You had them at number 1. For me, I got to put them at 4.
What?
Packers, Bears.
You're crazy. Get off the drugs. Get off the drugs. I'm just kidding. He doesn't take any drugs. But from what he's saying, I think he's taking some drugs.
My issue with that is they haven't both been good at the same time since, like, Jay Cutler's 1 year that he was good. Like,
no, last year.
The Packers weren't good last year.
Oh, that's right. The Packers sucked because McCarthy sucked.
So, and the Bears haven't been good for a while when the Packers were good. The best game that they've had as a rivalry is the get into the win and you're in at was it Lambeau or Soldier? I forget, where Aaron Rodgers throws the touchdown pass to Randall Cobb. That was the
Soldier Field.
That was the best moment they've had in a while, but I got to see some more meaningful games of late. 3, I'm going Eagles Giants, Miracle at the Meadowlands, Deshaun Jackson, my man Matt Johnson,
number 2,
punting it right in bounds to
number 2. I don't want to hear about it. We get it.
But the funny thing is that Giants fans, because they're so out of the rivalry loop as of late and so out of the division hunt, that they think that their rivalry with the Eagles is bigger than Cowboys-Eagles, and they think that Cowboys-Giants is even a rivalry. It's not. And the rest of the NFL does not see that as a rivalry.
So Cowboys-Eagles, number 2?
No, I got Steelers-Ravens. I think Steelers-Ravens is my number 2. That is, like you said, it seems like there are playoff implications every time they meet. They play for the division every year, it feels like, and the other team is in the wild card hunt. It's really crazy. And somehow Flacco versus Roethlisberger, they're like the 2 boringest names you could come up with, but it's been fun.
They went to Delaware and Miami of Ohio.
Number 1, Cowboys-Eagles. Shout out Dom Fiorello. We're going to be going back and forth every time they play for the next couple of years at school. I love to hate the Cowboys. As do I. That is the true feel of a rivalry, when you just love to hate another team. And as much as I can't stand the Cowboys, there's no other team in football that I'd rather have in the league, because what do I look forward to more every single year? That Eagles-Cowboys Sunday, 2 times a year. Excuse me. And especially when there's playoff implications, that's my number 1. Romo McNabb. Now Dak Prescott, Wentz were handed over the torches. It's the funnest football rivalry to watch by far.
Gotta make a quick Cowboys joke. Mark choked when he was talking about the Cowboys. But all right. So we are going to our last segment before Graham and Mark of the day. We're going to go to our way too early Super Bowl predictions. I'm going to go first. I'm going to go Chiefs-Bears. 2 young teams last year. You got the reigning NFL MVP with one of the best offensive coaches in the NFL. You have a running back in Kareem Hunt's not there anymore. Chiefs running back situation is a little... Actually, no, Kareem Hunt is coming back after...
He's with the Browns.
Excuse me.
They got They got Damian Williams.
Right either, but that's a discussion for another game. You got Tyreek Hill, who leads the league in 70-yard plus touchdowns, which is ridiculous. And you have a great defense in Chandler Jones right off the bat. Coming or not Chandler Jones. He just signed up. He's getting paid regardless. Number 95. He's a big dude.
D Ford?
No, D Ford plays linebacker.
Chris Jones.
There we go. Chris Jones is the best defensive lineman in the NFL right now. And yeah, that's my way too early Super Bowl prediction. Defensive tackle, excuse me.
Aaron Donald, bro.
Donald is like a mix. Donald's a freak. Donald's in his own category. Aaron Donald could play safety if you wanted to. It's just
I was listening to where was it? I think it was Ryan Clark on ESPN, and the question was, who is the closest NFL player right now to Michael Jordan? And he said Aaron Donald over Tom Brady. Very interesting. He said the difference between the best and the second best defensive lineman in football is greater between Donald and the rest of them than Tom Brady and the rest.
I like that, and I think he's 100% right. Yeah. Brady's 42.
Exactly.
All right, let's hear it.
So my Super Bowl pick in the NFC, I actually I want you to know, and all the fans out there, the listeners, this is not a biased pick, but talent-wise, I did not pick the Eagles to win the Super Bowl last year. I did not. This year, I have them winning the Super Bowl. I think this is the most talented team in football. They are. I think Carson Wentz, he's a top 5 MVP candidate odds-wise right now in Vegas, and I think he's going to prove that. This is going to be one of the best quarterback seasons we've seen in a long time. They are so deep, like we talked about last episode, at every position. And in the NFC, I really think the Saints are their only competition. I think the Rams proved that they aren't that special when it comes crunch time. The Eagles have already beat them twice head-to-head in meaningful matchups. I think we win the NFC and we win the Super Bowl. And when I'm looking at who we're going to play, I think the Chiefs are an easy pick. I have them as one of my top options for the Super Bowl. But since you took them, I'm going to go a little bit off the map and take the Chargers. I think
I like that if they get their running back back.
Exactly. And what would be interesting is if Melvin Gordon doesn't get a contract, but decides to be a little bit more of a man than Le'Veon Bell has ever been and play in a contract year and show why he's worth the money that another team.
Exactly what Earl Thomas tried to do. And look what happened to him. I guarantee you that doesn't happen again because of guys like Earl Thomas who stood up for the players. Guys like him and Le'Veon Bell are the reason why you're not going to see Zeke out there. You're not going to see Melvin Gordon out there. I guarantee you these running backs hold out as long as they can.
I would just love to see him on the field. He's one of my favorite players, but you can't forget about the other talent on that team. A lot of people sleep on the Chargers. If Phillip Rivers can just come up clutch one time in the playoffs, they have Keenan Allen, they have Melvin Gordon, Austin Eckler in the backfield.
Yeah, great.
Defensively, Derwin James, Melvin Ingram, Joey Bosa. They have so much talent, and I think this could be their Super Bowl year to lose to the Eagles.
So before we do our marking gram of the day, I just want to, this is show 3. And I think it's time that we talk about our fans because we really just want to thank you guys because you have been making this huge. You've been really blowing this up. And, like I said, follow, subscribe at Mark and Graham _podcast. Hit the subscribe button below. Give us a like on Instagram. We're going to be posting highlights. So, Mark, to wrap up the show, we are going to talk about the Mark and Graham of the day. And I'm going to just give mine really quick to wrap it up. I'm going to shout out all the Little Leaguers out there trying to get into the Little League World Series. People don't realize that tournament breeds MLB players. Cody Bellinger, Todd Frazier, just 2 off the bat that I could think of. You got kids pitching from 46, 60, 70 miles an hour. That's translating to 95 miles per hour. So, just a quick shout out to them because people don't know that they're playing qualifying games right now, and we're going to see them in Williamsport soon. So definitely shout out to all those little bros. This week was awesome, guys. Mark, what is your mark of the day?
I'm going to wrap it up with the birthday boy, the best athlete I have ever watched play sports in my lifetime, Mike Trout from Millville, New Jersey. I saw this funny meme the other day that on like Barstool, I think, that the Millville, New Jersey newspaper has their own page dedicated to Mike Trout. That's
Yeah.
how much of an impact he has made. They just post his statistics updated every single day, what he did the last night in Anaheim. He's a 2-time MVP, an 8-time All-Star. Finished top 6 in MVP. He's finished top 6 or 6 top 2 in MVP voting throughout his career. 6 times he's been top 2.
Speaking,
Time winner and 8-time All-Star. There's nobody better.
what if I told you Cody Bellinger was better? Well, wait. Save that for next week.
I'll debate that next week, and I'll ride with Trout any day of the week. You know.
Well, on Bellinger. It was a pleasure on the Mark and Graham podcast, week 3. Like, subscribe, give us follows, give us any recommendations you guys have to make this show better, and come back to the lounge next week with hot and entertaining topics and hot takes. We will see you guys soon. Thank you.
All right, we can't wait for next week. Interact with us on social media. Give us your all-decade teams, and please don't forget to vote on the poll. Whose team was better, Team Mark or Team Graham? We want to hear. We'll see you guys next week.